Have you found yourself waking up or being awake because your brain is monitoring your sleep? It's waking you up because you were just about to fall asleep, or it's keeping you awake because it wants to know if you're going to sleep or not. If so, if this sounds familiar to you, you've experienced what we call sleep monitoring. And in today's episode, we're going to see why it happens and how it fades away so you can arrive where you want to be, which is, of course, peaceful sleep and peace of mind. And before we jump into today's, this topic and look at it, just a super quick backstory. These type of episodes, like the one today, are actually, as an educator, it is one of my favorites because the answer here is gonna be so counterintuitive and so, so surprising, but yet at the same time, I think really be like, of course, yeah, that is the truth. That makes sense. And this, like today's episode, it came to me just the other day. And when I saw this, what I'm going to present to you, it was like, oh yeah, this is true. I think we got something really nice here. So I just want to share that before we get going. And with that said, yeah, let's jump into this topic. Something I hear a lot is a phrase similar to this one. I think my brain stays awake to check if I'm sleeping, or to check if I'm going to sleep, or I'm about to sleep, or kind of like, it's in other words, somebody has identified that their brain is kind of like monitoring their sleep, and that is keeping them awake. So today we're going to, of course, talk about the sleep monitoring, and we're going to see again why it happens and how it ends in sort of an A and B section. But before we do, we actually have a little announcement here. The next sleep coach certification batch starts on May 15th, so next month. So this is something you've been thinking about, of kind of taking the next step of actually becoming a sleep coach, whether that is to become eligible to work within the sleep coach school, or kind of as a new career path, or just to really deepen your knowledge. Well, application details are on our website. And by the way, I'm going to do a free webinar at some point. I'm going to announce that on the website and in our newsletter as well. So yes, with that said, now, why does sleep monitoring happen? Why does it happen, right? Why do we even have this phenomenon? Well, our brain is a survival machine. It is there to truly like keep us safe all the time. That is like its mission. So when our brain has seen some type of like sleep issue, when it has identified something related to sleep as a problem, then it's going to want to keep an eye on this for several reasons. It wants to understand, like whenever we have some type of like thing that we have identified as a problem, then we want to understand it, because we think that if we just understand it, we can also fix it. And also, as we're sort of trying to fix something, we also want to make sure like that is quote unquote working, that things are getting better. So for these two reasons, our brain it wants to monitor when it has identified anything as a problem. Now, when it comes to sleep, as opposed to like, I don't know, like we have a problem with our car and we want to make sure that it's working well, things are different when it comes to kind of internal monitoring. And particularly when it comes to sleep, we can often find this conundrum here. If the brain is asleep, it cannot monitor. But if the brain is awake, there is nothing to monitor, right? And I saw this very clearly, that it's kind of a catch-22. It's almost like a riddle. Like it's like truly, like if the brain is awake, then it cannot monitor. But if it is asleep, well, there's no sleep to monitor there. So this can certainly, like we can see how this can keep us in this like tricky situation where we aren't sleeping well. So sleep monitoring, it leads to choppy sleep, because it's this the hyperarousal from wanting to monitor, or we can just sleep very little, right? So we can see how sleep monitoring is tricky for these reasons, which then leads us to our second part, which is like, okay, how does it end? It can seem tricky, because it's like, okay, if our brain is like, it is a survival machine and it wants to know, then it's going to continue monitoring, and it can seem like a loop there. It's not clear how it ends. And here's the thing. Here's what I saw the other day that became so clear to me. If we think the following, if we understand what we just talked about, and we go, aha, I get it. It's not so much as like I have quote unquote I have insomnia. This is it. It's the sleep monitoring that's the problem. It's what's keeping me up. Okay. If we look at it things this way, and if we have this particular idea, what does that lead us? So I'm going to invite you to pause this video, take a minute and ponder this and see where this idea leads. Okay. And now if whether you took a pause or not, we will continue and we will see again, going back here, this idea, sleep monitoring is why I can sleep. This is the problem. Where does this lead us? Well, we have identified sleep monitoring as the problem. So our brain is going to want to monitor the sleep monitoring. All right. If sleep monitoring is identified as a problem, the brain is going to want to monitor the sleep monitoring because this is now the problem. And the thing is, the brain cannot both be in the sleep state and make sure that it is not keeping us awake by monitoring sleep. All right. So in other words, what's going to happen is the brain is going to want to be awake if sleep monitoring has become something we identified as a problem because it wants to check that. So counterintuitively, even if we see things very clearly, if we identify this as a problem, it still creates that hyperarousal need for monitoring, problem solving, fixing, etc. That is the reason we struggle. So we can summarize this by saying anything that we really identify as a problem leads to monitoring. And when we understand that, from the space we're in, when it comes to inner struggles, we see that it is really all about identification. That is really the thing. Anything kind of internally that would identify as a problem, that's going to lead to more struggle. So what really leads to where we want to be is to see this, that anything we do understand, that is demystified, that's no longer strange to us. When we understand that and we no longer identify that thing that was mysterious before as a threat, we no longer think of it as something that is harmful or dangerous for us. And we approach this with awareness. I understand what's happening. And when it's still happening, even though we understand it, we deploy kindness. Our brains are all the same. This happens to many, many people. Doesn't mean anything is strange or unusual with me. I'm a whole person, etc. Then this bothers us less and less, whether it is sleep monitoring or identifying sleep monitoring as a problem. When we deploy awareness and kindness, things fade out, the struggle fades out, and we find what we all want, which is more peaceful sleep and peace of mind. I know a little counterintuitive this episode, but if you're confused at this moment, just listen to it again, and I think it will become really, really clear to you. And hopefully, it will lead where you want to be. And if that is happening, then please let us know, because it's so nice to hear that from anyone in the community, and it's gives some hope and inspiration to other people. On the flip side, as always, if you find that things are not progressing the way you want them, if you find that you're kind of confused, not really seeing the path to where you want to be, then do check out our website, thesleepcraftschool.com. And if you decide to join any of our programs, then we look forward to seeing you on the other side. That was it for today. Hope you'll have a nice rest of your Monday, and see you soon. Bye-bye.